The October sun was setting early, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Daniel Crawford pulled his old pickup truck into the gas station on Route 9, the engine making that familiar knocking sound that meant another expensive repair was probably coming. At 48, he'd learned to recognize the sounds of things breaking down: cars, dreams, sometimes people. He stepped out, his gray Hanley shirt worn soft from years of washing, and began filling his tank. That's when he heard it. Not loud sobbing, but the quiet kind that comes from someone trying desperately not to fall apart in public. A woman stood near the air pump, her face buried in her hands. She wore a dark quilted coat that looked expensive, her brown hair catching the golden light. She was maybe in her mid-30s, and everything about her posture spoke of defeat. Daniel finished pumping, his eyes drifting back to her. His son, 10-year-old Connor, sat in the truck bed where he'd insisted on riding, swinging his legs and watching the scene with curious eyes. The boy had his mother's gentle heart. Karen had been gone for 3 years now, taken by a sudden aneurysm that left no time for goodbyes. Daniel walked over slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me, miss, are you all right? Is there something I can help you with?" She looked up, her face streaked with tears, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. For a moment, she seemed embarrassed, wiping at her cheeks with trembling hands. "I'm sorry, I'm fine. Just having a terrible day." "Doesn't look fine to me," Daniel said gently. He had that way about him, a calm presence that made people feel safe. Years of being a single father had taught him patience. "My name's Daniel. That's my son Connor over there. If you need help, we're happy to offer it." The woman's face crumbled again. I don't know what to do. My car broke down about 5 miles back. I called a tow truck, but they said it would be 4 hours. I have nowhere to go, and my phone is almost dead. I don't know anyone in this town." Daniel glanced at the darkening sky. 4 hours at a gas station in the cold wasn't right. "Where are you trying to get to?" "Willowbrook. It's about 30 miles north. I have a hotel reservation there." Daniel nodded. "Well, we're heading that direction. We can give you a ride. You can wait for the tow truck news at our place. Get warm, have some dinner, then I'll drive you to your hotel." The woman looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion, the natural wariness of someone who'd learned the world could be cruel. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because someone would have done it for my wife if she'd needed it," Daniel said simply. "And I'd want someone to do it for my son if he was ever in trouble." Something in his voice, the quiet sincerity of it, made her decision. "Thank you. I'm Victoria." "Victoria Hamilton. Nice to meet you, Victoria. Let's get you somewhere warm." Connor hopped down from the truck bed as they approached, his gray shirt and jeans dusty from playing. "Hi, I'm Connor. Are you coming home with us?" Victoria managed a small smile. "Just for a little while, if that's okay with you." "Sure. Dad always says our home is bigger when we share it." The drive to their house took 15 minutes. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, gradually calming down as Daniel asked simple, undemanding questions about where she was from and what brought her to the area. She explained she was returning from settling her late mother's estate in a neighboring state, a month of going through a lifetime of belongings, making impossible decisions about what to keep and what to let go. Their home was modest, a small ranch house with the porch that Daniel kept promising himself he'd fix. Inside, it was clean but lived in, with Connor's drawings on the refrigerator and photographs of happier times on the walls. Daniel made his specialty, spaghetti and meatballs, the sauce from his grandmother's recipe. Victoria sat at the kitchen table while Connor entertained her with stories about his school and his baseball team. She laughed genuinely for the first time that evening, and Daniel noticed how it transformed her face. Over dinner, Victoria shared more of her story. Her mother had passed away 2 months ago, leaving Victoria to sort through 60 years of accumulated life. "Mom and I weren't close these last few years," Victoria admitted quietly. "I got busy with my career, with making money, with proving I could be successful. I kept saying I'd visit more, spend more time with her, and then there was no more time." Her voice broke. "Going through her things, I found letters she'd written me that were never sent, telling me she loved me, that she was proud of me, that she wished we talked more. I was too busy to even call her most weeks. Daniel reached across the table and gently touched her hand. She knew you loved her. Mothers always know. Don't punish yourself for being human. Connor, with the wisdom that children sometimes possess, added, my mom died too. Dad says she's still with us in our hearts. Maybe your mom is in yours. Victoria's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were differently softer, healing. Thank you, both of you. After dinner, Victoria's phone rang. The tow truck had taken her car to a shop, but it wouldn't be ready until late the next day. A major repair. Her hotel reservation was for that night only, and the room had been given away after their grace period. You'll stay here, Daniel said immediately. We have a spare room. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable. Connor and I insist. Victoria started to protest, but Connor was already showing her to the guest room, chattering about the quilt his grandmother had made that covered the bed. She looked at Daniel with gratitude that went beyond words. That night, after Connor was asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat on the porch with cups of tea. The October air was cool but not cold, and the stars were bright without city lights to dim them. Why did you really stop to help me? Victoria asked. People don't do that anymore. Not really. Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. When Karen died, Connor and I were lost, completely lost. People showed up, and neighbors, friends, even strangers. They brought food, they helped with Connor, they just sat with us when the quiet got too loud. One man from our church, Tom Henderson, he came every Tuesday for 6 months just to help Connor with his homework because I was too broken to focus on fractions. He took a sip of his tea. I learned then that kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, seeing someone who needs help and not walking past. You were standing there crying at a gas station, and I just thought as somebody needs help. That's all. It's what we're supposed to do for each other. Victoria was quiet, absorbing his words. I've spent the last 15 years building a real estate empire. I own properties in 12 states. I'm worth more money than I can spend in a lifetime. And today, when I actually needed help, none of that mattered. None of it could get me anywhere. But you, a stranger, you just offered everything without expecting anything in return. The next morning, Victoria's phone rang early. The car repair would cost $3,000 and take 2 days. Not one. Daniel heard her on the phone arguing with the mechanic, frustration rising in her voice. When she hung up, she looked defeated again. I can take a look at it, Daniel offered. I've been fixing cars since I was 16. Maybe it's not as bad as they say. They drove to the shop together after dropping Connor at school. Daniel spent an hour under Victoria's hood, his hands steady and sure. When he emerged, he was shaking his head. They're right about the repair, but they're overcharging you by about $1,500, and I can do it for the cost of parts if you've got a couple days. Why? Victoria asked again. Why keep helping me? Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. Because you need help. That's reason enough. Over the next 2 days, something remarkable unfolded. Victoria stayed with them, and the house felt fuller somehow, more alive. She helped Connor with his English homework. Her degree from Yale suddenly useful for explaining metaphors to a 10-year-old. She cooked breakfast while Daniel worked on her car in the evenings. She laughed at Connor's jokes and listened to Daniel's stories about growing up in this small town. She also paid attention to the small details. The leak in the kitchen ceiling that Daniel caught water from with a bucket. The furnace that made concerning noises. Connor's shoes that were worn through. The medical bills on the counter from Karen's final hospital stamina bills that Daniel was still paying off, $50 at the time. On the third morning, Victoria's car was ready. Daniel had replaced the timing belt, fixed the water pump, and changed the oil for good measure. The total cost for parts, $470. Victoria tried to pay him $500 for his labor. He refused. Your family now, he said simply. Family doesn't charge family. Victoria's eyes welled up. She hugged him, then Connor, holding on perhaps a moment longer than necessary. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. You've reminded me what actually matters. She drove away mid-morning, and the house felt empty. Connor moped around, missing their temporary house guest. Daniel went back to work at the hardware store where he'd been employed for 20 years. his hand still carrying the motor oil stains that never quite washed out. He thought about Victoria occasionally over the next few weeks, hoping she was doing well, but not expecting to hear from her again. That's not why he'd helped. He'd helped because it was right, and sometimes the only reward for doing right is knowing you did. 4 weeks later, on a grey November morning, there was a knock at the door. Daniel answered it to find a man in an expensive suit holding a leather folder. "Daniel Crawford, I'm James Mitchell, attorney for Victoria Hamilton. May I come in?" Daniel's heart sank. Had something happened to Victoria? He let the lawyer in, offering him coffee, his mind racing with worry. James Mitchell opened his folder and pulled out documents. "Mr. Crawford, Miss Hamilton has asked me to present you with something. She's been working on this since the day she left your home." He slid papers across the kitchen table. Danielle stared at them, not understanding. "Deed of property, his name and address in Willowbrook." "I don't understand," Daniel said slowly. "Miss Hamilton purchased a property, a 4-bedroom house with a large backyard, in an excellent school district. She's had it completely renovated. It's yours, free and clear. She's also established a trust fund for Connor's educational full coverage for any college he chooses. And there's an additional $50,000 for immediate expenses, home furnishing, medical bills, whatever you need." Daniel felt the room spin. "I can't accept this. It's too much." "I didn't help her for any reward." "She knows that," James said gently. "That's exactly why she's doing this. She said you gave her something worth more than all her money. You gave her back her faith in people, and you showed her what truly matters in life. She said she has more houses than she can ever live in, and it would make her happier than anything to know this one was filled with the kindness and love she witnessed in your home." There was more. Victoria had also arranged a job for Daniel at a restoration workshop in Willowbrook, doing the kind of detailed carpentry work he'd always dreamed of, with better pay and benefits. "She'd thought of everything. She wanted to be here to tell you herself," James continued. "But she's currently 3 states away settling another property. She said to tell you that kindness is meant to flow, not to stop. She received it from you, and now she's passing it on. She hopes you'll do the same someday for someone else." That weekend, Daniel and Connor drove to Willowbrook to see the house. It was beautiful, a cream-colored siding, a wraparound porch, a yard big enough for a dog. Inside, it was furnished simply but comfortably, with the room clearly designed for a young boy, complete with a desk for homework and shelves for books. In the kitchen, on the counter, they found a handwritten note from Victoria. "Dear Daniel and Connor, you opened your home to me when I had nowhere to go. You fed me, comforted me, and asked nothing in return. You reminded me that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in the kindness we show each other. This house is a small thank you for a gift beyond price. Fill it with love, laughter, and the same generosity you showed me. And someday, when you see someone who needs help, I hope you'll stop just like you did at that gas station. With eternal gratitude and love, Victoria." Connor looked up at his father with wide eyes. "Dad, is this really ours?" Daniel knelt down to his son's level, tears streaming down his face. "Yeah, buddy, it's really ours, because you were kind to someone who needed help." "Yeah, because of that." Connor thought for a moment, then hugged his father tight. "Mom would be proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us." They moved in a month later. Daniel started his new job and found he loved restoring old furniture, bringing forgotten beauty back to life. Connor thrived in his new school, making friends easily with his open heart and generous spirit. Victoria visited twice that first year. She and Daniel became genuine friends, talking on the phone every few weeks. She'd started a foundation to help struggling families. Inspired by what she'd witnessed in Daniel's home, she said helping others had brought her more joy than all her years of accumulating wealth. On the anniversary of the day they'd met, Daniel and Connor drove back to that gas station on Route 9. They didn't have a specific reason, it just felt right. As they pulled in, Daniel noticed a young couple arguing near the air pump, their car hood up, steam rising from the engine. Connor looked at his father. "Dad?" Daniel smiled. "Yeah, I see them. Let's go see if we can help." As they walked over, Daniel thought about that October evening a year ago when he'd seen a crying woman and simply chose to stop. That one moment of kindness had changed everything, and not just for Victoria, but for him and Connor too. But more than that, it had reminded him of a simple truth: we're all just passing through this world together, and the best thing we can do is help each other along the way. Sometimes that help comes in small moments: a ride, a meal, a listening ear. And sometimes those small moments ripple out in ways we never imagined, changing lives in return. "Excuse me," Daniel called to the couple. "Looks like you could use some help." "I'm pretty good with engines. Mind if I take a look?" The young man turned, relief flooding his face. "Really? That would be amazing." Connor grinned up at his father, understanding perfectly. This was what it meant to pass kindness and not to let it flow forward, person to person, moment to moment, like water finding its way home.